This is your ultimate Freya build guide. We're going to cover, well, pretty much everything you need. Her ideal build, her very best modules, those crucial stats, and the shells that really make her tick. We'll also pinpoint exactly which content she just crushes and take a really honest look at her pros and cons. So if you've been wondering how to truly unlock the full potential of the Oblivion Flame, yeah, you've definitely come to the right place.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so Freya, she's an SSR character, Hollow Element, and she's part of the Astral Union faction.
Right, the Oblivion Flame. Even the title sounds impactful. It really does. And her stats, even just her base stats at max level before any gear, they tell you a lot.
Like what stands out?
Well, her hit points are solid, over 16,900. Defense is decent, nearly 1,000. Attack's okay, over 1,100.
Pretty standard support number so far.
Mostly, yeah. But then you see her speed, 141 base speed.
Whoa, okay. That's fast.
That's really fast.
Yeah.
It's a huge signal. She's designed to go first, or at least very early. Get those buffs out, get control established before the enemy even moves.
Makes sense. Any other standouts?
Her effect accuracy?
Yeah.
Base 32%. That definitely tells you she's meant to land her debuffs. We'll see just how crucial that is.
All right, let's unpack this duel kit then. You said Swiss Army knife, and it sounds like her kit is packed.
It really is comprehensive. Buffs for allies, debuffs for enemies, and this really unique healing mechanic we need to talk about.
So she fits into a lot of different team styles.
Incredibly versatile. Aggro teams, defensive teams. She just finds a way to contribute significantly. It's pretty rare to see that level of flexibility.
Okay, so starting with her skill 1.
Right, Dreamlore. It's her basic attack, single target, hits twice, does about 130% damage per hit at max level.
Standard enough, but there's more, right?
Oh yeah. The first hit has a 60% chance to give her a random ally Dreamweave for 2 turns. We'll define that buff later, it's important.
Okay, Dreamweave on an ally, and the second hit.
Second hit, 30% chance to land Nightmare on the target for 2 turns. Again, another unique effect we need to break down.
Got it. So buffs and debuffs just on her basic attack, but you mentioned something about manipulating turns.
Exactly. That comes from her passive, which is kind of woven into this first skill. It's called Dream Guide, and this is where Freya becomes like the battlefield conductor.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does Dream Guide work? What's this turn meter manipulation?
So turn meter is basically who gets to go next, right? Fill it up faster, you act sooner.
Simple enough.
Freya's passive plays with this constantly. Every time an ally gets any buff, doesn't have to be from Freya, could be from anyone, they gain 4% turn meter.
Okay, 4%. Doesn't sound huge on its own.
But it stacks, up to 3 times per turn. So one ally gets 3 buffs, that's a quick 12% turn meter boost, pushes up the queue.
I see. So buff-heavy teams really benefit.
Massively. But it's not just about boosting allies. She hinders enemies too.
How so?
Same passive. Dream Guide. Every time an enemy gets a debuff, there's a 70% chance they lose 4% turn meter.
Ah, pushing them back. Also stacks 3 times.
Also stacks 3 times per turn, so potentially a 12% turn meter loss for an enemy in 1 turn.
That 70% chance, though, feels like you need effect accuracy.
Absolutely critical.
Huh.
If you want that turn meter reduction to be reliable, you need high effect accuracy on Freya. Otherwise, it's just hoping for good luck, and you can't rely on that in tough fights.
Makes sense. Consistency is key. But hang on, you said her passive was even crazier.
Right, the doubling effect. This is what really pushes Freya over the top as a controller.
Interesting. How?
When Freya herself gets a buff, or when she applies a debuff, those turn meter effects we just talked about, they double.
Wait, so if she applies a debuff?
Instead of a 4% reduction chance, it's an 8% reduction chance per trigger.
And if she gets buffed?
Her own turn meter jumps by 8% instead of 4%.
So, if she applies a debuff and it triggers the max 3 times...
Potentially a 24% turn meter reduction on an enemy from just 1 skill use, assuming the effect accuracy check passes each time. It's huge.
That's insane. That completely changes the speed dynamic.
Totally. Pushes your team way ahead, slams the brakes on the enemy.
Yeah.
It's fundamental to her control.
Okay, wow. That's just skill 1 and it's passive. What about skill 2?
Skill 2 is Dreambinder. This is her area of effect defensive skill. Cooldown is 3 turns initially.
What does it do?
Applies defense plus to all allies. That's a big 60% defense increase for 2 turns. Makes everyone much tankier.
Nice team-wide buff.
And it also applies Dreamweave to everyone. Remember that from skill 1?
Yeah, the buff.
Here, she applies it to all allies, and there's an 80% chance for each ally to get an extra stack. So most allies will end up with 2 stacks of Dreamweave right away.
Okay, so spreading that buff around. Does the skill improve?
Yes. At max level, the cooldown drops by 1 turn. so it becomes a 2-turn cooldown.
Oh, that's significant. Means you can keep that defense buff and Dreamweave up almost constantly.
Exactly. Much better uptime, much more consistent support.
All right, that covers defense. What about her ultimate, skill 3?
That's Dream of Chaos. Cooldown is 4 turns. This one's more offensive.
How so?
First, it applies Attack Plus to all allies for 2 turns. That's a 40% attack increase.
Team-wide offense boost first. Then what?
Then she hits all enemies with 4 hits, each doing 65% damage. It's area effect damage.
4 hits. That seems like a lot.
It is. And each of those 4 hits has a 30% chance to inflict that nightmare debuff for 2 turns.
Spreading the nightmare around now. With 4 hits, the chance of landing it on everyone seems pretty high.
Much higher, yeah. And at max level, this skill gets even better. It boosts the damage amped and the healing effect of Nightmare itself to 15%.
Okay, we definitely need to talk about these unique effects now. Dreamweave and Nightmare, what exactly do they do?
Let's start with Dreamweave. Think of it like a preemptive cleanse.
Preemptive.
Yeah, it stacks up to 3 times. When an ally with a stack gets hit by a debuff, say, a stun or a defense break, one stack gets consumed and the debuff is instantly purified. Gone.
Oh, wow. So protects against crowd control and nasty debuffs.
Exactly. It's a really strong layer of defense. But there's a catch, really important one.
Okay.
It only works on debuffs applied after the ally has Dreamweave stacks. Yeah. It can't cleanse debuffs that were already there.
I see. So it prevents new problems, doesn't fix existing ones. Still very useful, though.
Very. Now, Nightmare. This one's fascinating.
Go on.
So, first part is simple. Enemies with Nightmare take 15% more damage. Straight up damage amplification for your team.
Always good.
But the really unique part, when an enemy with Nightmare is attacked, the attacker heals themselves for 15% of the damage they dealt.
Wait, what? The attacker heals?
Yep. Your damage dealers essentially get life leech just by attacking enemies. Freya has put Nightmare on.
That changes things. Your DPS becomes self-sustaining.
Pretty much. It creates this amazing loop where offensive pressure translates directly into survivability. You might not need as much dedicated healing if your damage dealers are constantly topping themselves up.
That is genuinely unique. It's not Freya healing directly, but she enables the healing.
Precisely. It fundamentally changes how you can approach sustain in longer fights.
Okay, this kit is incredibly synergistic and complex. How should you prioritize leveling her skills then?
Good question. The order is pretty clear for maximizing her impact early. Skill 1, Dream Lure to level 5 first, no question.
Why skill 1 first?
Because that maximizes her turn meter manipulation right away. That's her core strength, especially with the double effect passive. You want that online ASA.
Makes sense. Get the control engine running. What's next?
Then skill 2, Dream Binder to level 5. Bolster the team's defense, get those Dreamweave stacks rolling consistently, reduce its cooldown.
Defense and protection second.
Yeah.
And
Finally, skill 3, Dream of Chaos to level 5. Maximize the attack buff, the damage, and the Nightmare application and potency.
So, turn meter control, defense protection, offense debuffing.
Exactly. That progression gets her most impactful abilities running optimally as quickly as possible.
And what about her prowess levels? Do they add much?
They definitely do. Prowess 1 and 3 give her a basic attack, defense, and hit points boosts 5% each time. Small bumps, but they add up, make her tougher.
Okay, general stat increases.
Prowess 2 is a big one, though. 12% effect accuracy.
Crucial for landing those debuffs and turn meter reductions reliably.
Absolutely essential. Turns that 70% chance into something much more dependable. Prowess 4 gives 12% effect resistance, which is nice for helping her avoid getting shut down herself.
It's a bit of self-protection.
And Prowess 5 is another significant boost. She gets an extra 10% damage dealt and takes 10% less damage.
So she hits a bit harder and gets even tankier.
Yep. It really rounds her out, makes her a much more solid presence on the field overall. These aren't just minor tweaks, they make a real difference.
Okay, so she's got this incredible kit, good scats, useful prowess. Where does she actually perform best? Let's talk content.
Right. Overall, she's generally rated extremely highly, like T.5 overall. That's top tier for a support.
T.5. That's huge. What about specific player versus environment content?
She's phenomenal there. Rated T0 in Aurora and Terramaton.
The highest tier.
Yep. Also T.5 in Doki Doki, and T0 again in Union Boss and Phantom content. Basically, she's one of the best choices you can make for most challenging PvE stuff.
Why does she excel so much there?
It really comes down to that turn meter manipulation. A lot of PvE bosses and enemies can have their turn meter lowered. Freya just slots in perfectly and gives your team so many extra turns while denying the enemy theirs.
So she controls the fight tempo, lets you avoid big boss attacks or line up your damage better.
Exactly that. She disrupts enemy patterns, gives you breathing room, lets you execute your strategy more reliably.
But again, that 70% chance.
It's the main caveat, yes. High effect accuracy is non-negotiable if you want that consistent control. There's still some randomness, but the payoff is so high you build for it.
And player versus player, how does she fare there?
She's still very good, but maybe a bit more team-dependent. Her rating is generally strong, but she really shines in specific compositions built around her debuffs and turn meter control. Not quite as universally plug-and-play as in PvE, but definitely a major threat in the right setup.
Okay, let's boil it down. What are her biggest pros? Her key strengths?
Number 1, she brings both great buffs and great debuffs. Defense up, attack up for allies, nightmare for enemies. That versatility is huge.
Right, enhancing and weakening simultaneously.
Number 2, that unique healing through nightmare. Allowing your damage dealers to sustain themselves is incredibly powerful, especially in longer battles.
Frees up healer slots, potentially?
Or just adds up a massive layer of survivability. Third, obviously the turn meter manipulation, both speeding up allies and slowing down enemies. That's game-changing control.
Dictating the flow of battle.
And finally, she synergizes brilliantly with other debuffers. The more debuffs flying around, the more turn meter reduction she can potentially trigger. She loves being on debuff-heavy teams.
Sounds amazing. But every character has weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
What are Freya's cons?
The biggest one, her absolute kryptonite, is debuff immunity.
Yeah. If the enemy can't be debuffed,
Then her nightmare doesn't land, and critically, the turn meter reduction from her passive doesn't trigger off debuffs.
Yeah.
It shuts down a huge part of her kit.
so characters or bosses with immunity are a major problem.
Especially in PvP, where units like Hellkid can just ignore her main mechanics. It really limits her effectiveness in those matchups.
Okay, debuff immunity is the big one. Anything else?
Well, remember that while Nightmare provides healing, she's not a dedicated healer herself.
Right, the attackers heal themselves.
Yeah, but supportive characters like Freya herself or maybe a dedicated buffer, they don't attack often, so they don't benefit much, if at all, from the Nightmare Life Leech. She can't keep the non-attackers topped up that way.
Good point. Don't expect her to replace your main healer entirely.
Exactly. It supplements healing. It doesn't replace it across the board.
Okay, so knowing her strengths and weaknesses, who does she work best with? Let's talk synergies.
Oh, there are some fantastic partners for her. Heinrich is a prime example.
Why Heinrich?
Heinrich's skills can strip buffs and apply area of effect debuffs, including turn meter reduction himself. When you pair that with Freya's Dream Guide passive.
You get cascading turn meter loss across the whole enemy team.
Pretty much. Heinrich sets them up. Freya's passive kicks in repeatedly. It's relentless control. He removes immunity, she applies debuffs, everyone loses turns.
Nasty combo. Any others?
For pure, unadulterated turn meter lockdown, some people call the Freya and Rosa pairing toxic.
Toxic? Why?
Rosa's ultimate drops an area of effect speed debuff on all enemies. Combine that inherent slowness with Freya constantly reducing their turn meter every time Rosa or anyone else applies a debuff.
Oh, wow. The enemies just don't get to play.
It can feel like that sometimes. Your team can end up taking multiple turns for every single enemy turn. It's incredibly oppressive control if the enemy doesn't have immunity.
I can see why they'd call it toxic. Okay, so strong synergies there. What about counters, besides just raw debuff immunity?
Debuff immunity really is the main one. Like we said, Hellkid in PvP is a classic example. He just shrugs off everything Freya wants to do.
But you mentioned Heinrich could help there.
Sometimes, yeah. If Heinrich can strip the immunity or barrier before Freya acts, then her debuffs might land. It highlights that strategic counter-picking in team building. It's not always a hard counter if you have the right tools to enable her.
Right, it's about the whole team composition. Okay, let's shift gears to building her. How do we optimize Freya to get the most out of her?
The core philosophy is pretty clear. Speed, survivability, and effect accuracy.
Those three pillars.
Yep. You need her fast enough to act early and often. You need her tough enough to survive focus fire because opponents will try to take her out quickly. And you need enough effect accuracy to make her debuffs and turn meter control reliable. Get those right, and she's a monster.
Let's start with shells then. These are the big, unique gear pieces, right? Not the module sets.
Correct. Shells give a major defining ability. For PvE, with maybe some PvP notes, Artisan is a really strong contender.
Artisan, what's its effect?
Before Freya acts, it gives her a chunk of defense, 700 flat defense for 2 turns. More importantly, it gives a big shield, scaled off 400% of her defense, to both herself and the ally with the lowest current health percentage. also for 2 turns.
Wow, so personal defense and a big shield for the squishiest ally.
Exactly. Huge survivability boost for her and potentially your main damage dealer. Really helps keep key units alive.
What's the downside?
The main one, mostly for PvP speed demons, is that you can't use a 6-piece speed Inferno module set with it, so your absolute top-end speed might be slightly lower than a Freya built purely for speed. In PvE, that's usually less of a concern.
Okay. And what module sets pair well with Artisan?
You could go 12-piece Swiftrush for max speed despite this shell limitation, or maybe 8-piece Drive or Unbreakable for more defense, maybe mixing in a 6-piece Collis Guard or Ether Plague. Alternatively, stacking defensive 12-piece sets like Timeweave, Bloodbath, or Unbreakable is an option if you need extreme tankiness, maybe with just an 8-piece Swiftrush.
Lots of options depending on needs. What's another good shell?
Gigabyte is another solid choice. Its effect increases Freya's turn meter by 35% every time the enemy team takes 3 actions. It can trigger once per turn.
So she gains turn meter just from enemies acting?
Yep. Helps her keep up with fast PvE enemies, and in PvP, it can let her cut in unexpectedly after the enemy takes a few turns.
When is it less good?
If you're fighting a single slow boss or an enemy team that's constantly crowd-controlled, they might not take enough actions frequently enough for Gigabyte to trigger often. Also, like Artisan, no 6-piece speed Inferno set possible, and its secondary matrix stats aren't always the best.
Module sets for Gigabyte, similar ideas.
Pretty similar. 12-piece Swiftrush is great, 8-piece Strive or Wellspring for utility, 6-piece Ether Plague or Evil Guard, and again, those alternative 12-piece defensive sets like Timeweave, Bloodbath, or Unbreakable can work too, balanced with Swiftrush.
Okay, how about Jackal Guard?
Jackal Guard is really interesting, especially for speed. After Freya takes her turn, it does a follow-up attack, some decent damage.
Damage is nice, but what else?
The key part. It applies Speed Plus to Freya for 3 turns and boosts her turn meter by 25%.
Oh, so it makes her even faster and helps her cycle immediately?
Exactly. It's fantastic if your team doesn't already have a reliable speed buffer like Lily. Lets Freya loop her turns much quicker, and it opens up great speed-focused module options.
When would you not use it?
If you already have speed buff covered reliably by someone else, then that part of Jackal Guard is redundant. The turn meter boost is always nice, though.
Modules for Jackal Guard, leaning towards speed.
Definitely. 12-piece Swiftrush is ideal here. Pair it with maybe an 8-piece Bulwark or Wellspring, and a 6-piece Swift Smite is very common and synergistic, offering speed and effect accuracy. You could also do 12-piece Timeweave for cooldowns, 8-piece Swiftrush, and 6-piece Swift Smite.
And you mentioned Black Flag quickly.
Yeah, just a note for earlier game players.
Yeah.
Black Flag is like a budget Jackal Guard, lower rarity, weaker stats, but gives a similar speed plus buff and turn meter advance. Good placeholder until you get Jackal Guard. Usually run with 12-piece Swiftrush and 8-piece Bramble early on.
Got it. Are there any shells specifically for PvP?
Yes, a couple are worth mentioning. Amber is huge in PvP.
Amber. What's its trick?
It's basically a cheat death mechanic. Once every 6 turns, if the wearer would die, they instead survive, drop their turn meter, cleanse effects, heal for 60% max HP, and become invincible for a turn in an ice state.
Wow, just completely denies a kill.
Exactly. Amazing for keeping a crucial unit like Freya, or maybe a vulnerable damage dealer, alive through enemy burst. Really disrupts kill attempts.
Sounds powerful. What about Alicorn?
Alicorn is all about fighting through debuffs in PvP. At the start of Freya's turn, if she has debuffs, it cleanses 2 of them. And for each one cleansed, she gets a stacking 25% effect resistance buff for 2 turns. It has a 4-turn cooldown.
So it helps her resist or shrug off control effects?
Precisely. Ideal if you're facing teams that try to lock down your key supports early. Helps ensure Freya gets her turn even under pressure.
Okay, those are some powerful shell options. Let's drill down into the module sets themselves. You mentioned Swiftrush a lot.
Yeah, Swiftrush is kind of the default for supports for a reason. The speed bonuses are just massive. 8% for 4 pieces, 20% for 8 pieces, and a huge 35% for the full 12-piece set.
35% speed just from the set.
Yep, it's all about getting that first turn, cycling faster, applying buffs and debuffs before the enemy. Absolutely crucial in many scenarios.
What about Timeweave as a 12-piece? You mentioned it conflicts with Swiftrush.
Right. Timeweave gives 18% effect accuracy at 6 and 12 pieces, which is great for Freya. But the 12-piece bonus is the interesting part. A 35% chance at the start of your turn to reduce all skill cooldowns by 1 turn.
Oh, faster skills. But you lose the top-end speed from 12-piece Swiftrush.
Exactly. It's a trade-off. Do you want maximum possible speed, or do you want more frequent access to powerful skills like her ultimate? Timeweave lets her use Dreambinder and Dream of Chaos more often, which can be incredibly valuable, especially if you pair with maybe an 8-piece Swiftrush set to still get a decent speed boost.
Interesting choice there. And Bloodbath, you said anti-burst.
Yeah, Bloodbath is mainly a defensive PvP set. Gives 18% effect resistance at 6 and 12 pieces. The 12-piece effect is the key. If you take damage that exceeds 20% of your max HP in one go, that excess damage is reduced by 55%.
So it heavily dampens huge hits, prevents one-shots.
Pretty much. It's designed to counter those glass cannon PvP teams that rely on deleting one target immediately. Can sometimes be useful in specific PvE boss fights with massive single-target nukes too, but primarily a PvP tool for survival.
Okay, moving down to 8-piece sets, Swiftrush is still good here.
Definitely. 20% speed from 8-piece Swiftrush is still very significant. And like we said, combining 8-piece Swiftrush with something like 12-piece Timeweave can be a great balance in PvE, getting good speed and the cooldown reduction.
What about Strive as an 8-piece?
Strive gives defense 10% at 4 and 8 pieces. The 8-piece bonus gives you 10% turn meter whenever you get attacked.
Ah, so getting hit speeds you up.
Sort of, yeah. Helps you catch up if the enemy is faster in PvP. And in PvE, against bosses that hit frequently or use lots of area of effect attacks, it can actually provide a surprising amount of turn meter gain over the course of a fight.
And Bulwark, you said PvP focus.
Mostly, yeah. Gives hit points 10% in 4 and 8 pieces. The 8-piece bonus grants immunity for the very first turn of each battle wave.
Immunity, so no debuffs.
Correct. For that crucial first turn, you can't be stunned, frozen, defense broken, nothing. It's purely to counter those opening crowd control strategies in PvP, ensuring your Freya gets to make her first move.
Makes sense for ensuring setup.
Yeah.
Lastly, 6-piece sets. Swift Smite seemed important.
Swift Smite is fantastic for supports like Freya. 15% speed and 20% effect accuracy from just a 6-piece set.
That hits 2 of her key stats directly.
Exactly. It's efficient and effective. And since it appears on several really good supportive shells like Jackal Guard, it's often easy to fit into a build while you're maybe running a 12-piece Swiftrush or Timeweave. Great filler set that provides core stats.
Okay, that covers shells and modules. Now, stat priorities. When you're looking at the gear pieces themselves, what are the main stats we want?
On the shell passives, those main stats per slot. Slot 1, you generally want either hit point percentage or defense percentage. Depends a bit on the rest of your build and team.
Survivability first. Slot 2.
Slot 2, speed. Always speed if you can get it. It's just too valuable for her role.
Non-negotiable speed. And slot 3.
Slot 3, ideally you want one of the damage reduction passives. Things like reducing area of effect damage taken or critical damage taken. Adds another layer of toughness.
Okay, main stats clear. What about the substats? The random bonus stats on gear. What's the priority list there?
Top priority is speed until you hit whatever benchmark you're aiming for the content you're doing.
Speed first. Then.
Effect accuracy.
Yeah.
Again, until you reach a comfortable level where her debuffs are landing consistently. Usually around 80–100% is a good target for most content, maybe higher for specific endgame stuff or PvP.
Speed, then effect accuracy after that.
Then it's survivability. Hit point percentage and defense percentage are roughly equal in value. Get whichever rolls well. And finally, flat hit points and flat defense are okay, but less impactful than the percentage stats.
So speed, effect accuracy, HP percent, or def percent flat HP, a flat def.
That's the general hierarchy, yeah.
Let's just quickly revisit why those stats are so key. Speed.
Speed is everything for supports, especially controllers like Freya. Going first means applying buffs before your team acts, applying debuffs before the enemy acts, getting that turn meter manipulation engine running immediately. Faster cycling means more skill usage, more control. It dictates the entire pace of the fight.
Okay, HP percent is defense percent. Why choose one or the other or both?
Right. Both boost survivability. Hit points give you a bigger raw health pool, which is better against defense breaks or just pure damage that ignores defense. It gives more buffer against being one shot. Defense makes each point of health more valuable, reduces incoming damage, and scales really well with shields, like from Artisan, and makes healers more effective since they're healing a smaller percentage of damage taken.
So maybe a mix is good?
Often, yeah. A balance is usually best unless your shell strongly favors one, like Artisan favoring defense for its shield. Or you're facing specific threats like constant defense breaks.
And effect accuracy. You stressed its importance.
Absolutely essential for her core job. If her Nightmare doesn't land, you lose damage amp and healing. If her turn meter reduction doesn't trigger because the debuff fails the accuracy check, you lose control. While some niche builds might rely on teammates for debuffs, if you want Freya to control the fight with her double passive effect, she needs to land those debuffs herself. So effect accuracy is vital for consistency.
Makes perfect sense. What about effect resistance? You put it lower priority.
It's definitely useful. Resisting a key stun or freeze can save you. It gives you that chance to get lucky. But it's generally less reliable and less impactful than ensuring your strategy works via speed and effect accuracy. It's more of a nice-to-have bonus stat rather than something you actively build your gear around, sacrificing core stats for.
Got it. Build philosophy clear. Now let's put it all together. How does Freya fit into actual teams?
Her versatility means she slots into a lot of different compositions. She's that support, debuffer, turn meter engine that enables so many other characters.
Can you give us some examples, maybe starting with Aurora Hell?
Sure. In Aurora Hell, you often see Freya paired with big damage per second characters like Messiah or Diking. Freya controls the enemies, keeps her team going faster. Nightmare helps Messiah Diking heal.
Who else is in those teams usually?
Often another support like Lily for more buffs and speed, maybe a sustain unit like Valerian or Lingluo to handle big hits, and sometimes another debuffer like Holden to really maximize that turn meter reduction synergy with Freya.
Okay, what about Doki Doki Hell or Inferno?
Freya's a staple there too. Damage dealers might be Romoka or Tiamat.
Yeah.
Debuffers like Klaus or Kazuo the Reverie work great with her. Maybe Tsukiyomi for extra support. Sanya or Valerian for sustain.
Any interesting specific combos there?
Yeah, sometimes you see Freya paired with units like Kraken or Marvel. Their specific debuffs really feed into Freya's turn meter control, creating some really oppressive lockdown on the bosses.
Cool. Terramaton Hell Inferno.
Similar principles. Control is key. Diting or Messiah again for damage, or even niche damage dealers like Sanya Vengeful Thorn with Fangus. Klaus or Dinah often appear as debuff partners. Valerian is a common sustain choice. Freya's turn meter denial is just invaluable there.
Does she work in simpler teams too, like for campaign or free-to-play?
Absolutely. She's fantastic early on. You can slot her into starter teams with units like Leon, Gray, Marvel. Her control and the Nightmare sustain make early progression much, much smoother. Great value, even without perfect gear yet.
What about Grim Pursuit bosses? She seems useful there too.
Definitely. The team comps vary a lot depending on the boss, but Freya shows up frequently. For Jacques, maybe with Gray, Leon, Chiaki the Echo. For Kururu, maybe Leon or even Hellkid.
Hellkid, really?
Yeah, sometimes specific boss mechanics make unusual pairings work. For Fibbing, you might see faster teams with Rosa, Messiah, Diting, Valerian, Sanya. Freya keeps the tempo up.
Whitney
often sees Freya with Rosa, Chloros, Tiamat, Leon, maybe Marvel or Valerian. Lots of debuffs flying around.
Oh.
Nikonata teams love Freya's control. Rosa, Viper, Diting, Gray are common partners, along with Marvel, Heinrich, or Valerian. Keep the boss locked down.
Sharon.
Again, lots of options. Diting, Messiah, Klaus, Holden, Rosa, Gray, Marvel, often with Lily or Valerian supporting. Freya provides the control core.
And Hoyan or Rengokutsu?
Similar patterns. High damage like Diting, Chloros, maybe Rosa or Klaus for debuffs, Valerian or Dinah for sustain. Freya enables these strategies through her control.
Wow. Okay, so the common thread across all these examples
is that Freya consistently brings that turn meter control, the debuff utility,
yeah,
Nightmare's damage amp and healing, and sometimes that proactive protection with Dreamweave. She just adds so much value in so many different ways.
Makes her a cornerstone piece for a huge amount of content.
Exactly. She's not just a niche specialist. She's a widely applicable, high-impact enabler, a truly valuable asset across the entire game.